A new report reveals alarming concerns about the spread of diseases in Gaza. The report highlights a significant increase in infections due to deteriorating health infrastructure and limited access to medical supplies. Civilians bear the brunt of the violence. Basic necessities are in critically short supply. Hospitals are overwhelmed with casualties. The infrastructure is devastated. The people of Gaza are trapped in a cycle of violence. The international community is deeply concerned. The new Israeli military evacuation orders have added another layer of complexity to the already dire situation in Gaza. These orders have forced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians to flee their homes. This mass displacement has overwhelmed existing resources and infrastructure. The evacuation orders have made it even more challenging to deliver humanitarian aid. The evacuations have also disrupted the operations of hospitals and medical facilities. The psychological toll of the conflict and displacement is immeasurable. The ongoing crisis has created a breeding ground for disease and malnutrition in Gaza. With limited access to clean water, sanitation, and healthcare, the risk of outbreaks is extremely high. Children are particularly vulnerable to waterborne illnesses and malnutrition. Hospitals are struggling to cope with the influx of patients, many of whom are suffering from injuries sustained during the conflict. The shortage of medical supplies, including essential medicines and equipment, is exacerbating the crisis. Medical staff are working tirelessly, but they are overwhelmed and under-resourced. Food insecurity is another major concern. With supply chains disrupted and many families displaced from their homes, access to food is limited. Malnutrition rates are rising, particularly among children, which can have long-term consequences for their health and development. The international community must prioritize addressing the urgent health and nutrition needs of the people of Gaza. This includes providing medical supplies, ensuring access to clean water and sanitation, and supporting food distribution programs. Pause 1S. The lethal combination of hunger and disease is looming over Gaza, threatening to lead to even more deaths. According to the World Health Organization, the situation is dire. The ongoing conflict has severely disrupted food supplies, leading to widespread hunger. Malnutrition is becoming increasingly common, particularly among children, who are the most vulnerable. Pause 2S. Compounding the crisis, the healthcare system in Gaza is on the brink of collapse. Hospitals and clinics are overwhelmed, lacking essential medical supplies and personnel. Preventable diseases are spreading rapidly due to poor sanitation and overcrowded living conditions. The lack of clean water and proper sanitation facilities has led to outbreaks of waterborne diseases, further exacerbating the public health crisis. Pause 2S. Humanitarian organizations are sounding the alarm, warning that without immediate intervention, the combination of hunger and disease could result in a catastrophic loss of life. They are calling for urgent international action to provide food, medical supplies, and support to Gaza's struggling healthcare system. Pause 2S. The international community must respond swiftly to prevent further suffering and loss of life in Gaza. It is a race against time to address the lethal combination of hunger and disease before it claims more lives. Understanding the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza is exacerbated by the ongoing blockade and military operations, which have left the region in a state of perpetual emergency. The blockade has restricted the flow of goods and people, leading to widespread poverty and unemployment. Essential services such as healthcare, education, and sanitation are severely underfunded and overstretched. The lack of access to clean water and adequate medical care has had a devastating impact on public health. The internal political divisions between Fatah and Hamas further complicate efforts to address the crisis. These divisions have hindered the delivery of aid and the implementation of effective governance. The international community must take a more active role in pressuring all parties to lift the blockade and ensure the protection of human rights in Gaza. Funding and support, critical for Gaza's survival. Humanitarian organizations working in Gaza are facing a critical funding shortfall. The scale of the needs is immense, and the resources available are simply not enough to meet the demand. Without adequate funding, essential services will be cut, and the humanitarian crisis will worsen. International donors must step up their financial support for Gaza. This includes providing funding for emergency relief efforts, as well as long-term development projects that address the root causes of the crisis. It is also essential to ensure that funding reaches those who need it most. This requires working with trusted local partners and implementing effective monitoring mechanisms to prevent corruption and ensure accountability. The international community has a moral obligation to support the people of Gaza. Failing to provide adequate funding will have devastating consequences for millions of people. The long-term consequences of the crisis. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza will have long-term consequences for the Palestinian people. The conflict has caused widespread destruction of infrastructure, including homes, schools, hospitals, and businesses. The economy has been devastated, with unemployment rates soaring and many families struggling to make ends meet. The crisis has also exacerbated existing social problems, such as poverty, inequality, and trauma. The international community must support the reconstruction and recovery of Gaza. This includes providing financial assistance, technical expertise, and capacity-building programs. It is also essential to address the root causes of the crisis, including the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the blockade. Failure to do so will only lead to further suffering and instability in the future. A call to action towards a sustainable solution for Gaza. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza demands a global response. The international community must unite to find a just and lasting solution. An immediate ceasefire is essential to alleviate suffering. Humanitarian aid must flow freely and the blockade lifted. Addressing the root causes, including occupation and denial of rights, is crucial. The people of Gaza deserve our support and commitment to peace.